Hello people, you're welcome to Pro Masterclass. My name is Tola Alabi, and in today's class I'm going to be talking about containers. Containers in business. And I know that might confuse a lot of you, so I'm going to put it in perspective. Now I'm going to start by saying I really love the movie The Founder, and the movie really talks about the rise of McDonald's, the fast food company, and it looks at the life of a man called Ray Kroc, and I think the part I loved the most in the movie was a particular part where he was talking to his financial advisor, and at that point the company was not making a lot of money. The revenue was very low. What they were spending on training was very high, and they were working at a loss actually. And at the point, he was telling his financial advisor what the situation was, and the financial advisor told him, "Okay, tell me about the land." And he said, "Well, the franchisees go and get the land, and when they get the land, they approach him, and he trains them and tells them the specification of what they should build on the land, and they run the business." And he asked the advisor, "Do you have a problem with that? Is there a problem with that?" And the advisor said, "Yes, there's a big problem, because it seems you don't know the business you are in." And he said, "You are not in the burger business. You are in the real estate business." See, I don't remember too many parts of that movie, but that part of that movie always stuck in my head. When he said, "You do not realize the business you are in. You are not in the burger business, you are in the real estate business." And that is what changed the fortunes of McDonald's. They realized that if they could buy the land and restrict the franchisees to build on their land, they would not only be paying for the franchise, but they would also be paying rent on the land that they've acquired from them. So they would always be making money from their landed properties. For me, this was an epiphany. And I want to, in this class, I'm going to be talking largely to people in the creative industry, because that's the industry I'm in. I'm going to be talking to designers a lot. But I guess any business person can relate with this. You see, I meet a lot of designers. By virtue of the fact that I do a lot of speaking engagements, I have my YouTube channel going, I have my podcast. A lot of people reach out to me and ask me questions. And a lot of questions I get revolve around, "Oh, I'm a graphic designer, I'm not making a lot of money. I'm a web designer, I'm a UI, UX designer, I'm not making a lot of money." And that is what I really want to address. Containers. Because when I talk to designers, they always have a ready container in which they put themselves. So I am a graphic designer. So my container is to design graphics. I am a web designer. So my container is to design stuff for the web. I'm a UI UX designer. So that is my container. So designers always have ready containers. And I used to say that too very early on, till very recently when I just thought about it, and I was like, you are more than this thing. So I used to address myself as an identity designer, till I realized that I was more than that. And I think these containers, to a very large extent, restrict us in our thinking, and restrict us in our ability, especially in the design industry. And for me personally, it restricted me a lot, because I thought of myself as a logo designer. So when people came with things that were not logo, I would immediately switch off in my mind and say, "This is not for me." And there's a danger in that, because restriction means that your influence becomes very small. Your perception of yourself becomes very small. Your ability to express yourself becomes very limited. And then you are not willing to explore new grounds. And when you can't explore new grounds, you can't grow as a business person. So, my advice for designers is see yourself as a designer, full stop. Not as a graphic designer, not as a web designer, not as a UI UX designer, not as an architect. You are a designer, full stop. You see, there's a particular architect who I respect. You understand? I love his work. I respect him, and one thing I love about him, his name is Frank Lloyd Wright, and he was a very influential architect. And one thing that really drew me to his story was when he designed the space for people, he didn't just design rooms like most architects do, design rooms. So you as an architect, you feel your work is just to allocate rooms and spaces and see how they connect. Yes, that's your work. But then Frank Lloyd Wright went the extra mile. So when he would design the cabinets in the house. He would design the furniture, even up to the cutlery, the silverware they use, he would design that. Because Frank Lloyd Wright didn't see himself as an architect. He saw himself as a creator, as a designer. So he wasn't limited to designing spaces. He was designing the living experience of people in that space. So he thought, what kind of spoons or knives or plates would go with this space? What kind of cabinets? What's the finish of the material? What would the wall be? What would the ceiling be? So he was a designer, not an architect. He was a designer. So you need to think of yourself as a designer. You see, a lot of people in the design industry, you see, when you're not working on a design project, so you're a graphic designer, you're not working on a graphic design project, you don't know what to do with yourself. So you feel like, oh, okay, I don't have any project to do. So right now, I'm not a designer because I've been unemployed by a client for the past 3-4 months. So you feel less of a designer because you have not worked on pixels in 3-4 months. But that doesn't make you less of a designer. The only thing that you've not expressed yourself through pixels in 3-4 months. But you're still a designer. You're not a designer because you use a laptop or because you know a particular software or app. You're not a designer because of what you do. You're a designer because of how you think. So you're always in design mode. And what is design? When you do things, you come up with an idea to solve a problem. So you're always in design mode. So your thinking is that of a designer. So designers don't only think about how to solve graphic design problems. And that's where I see that we limit ourselves in the creative industry when we give ourselves these containers. Of course, sometimes in communicating with people, we need to put these containers in there so that they can relate. So sometimes you might need to introduce yourself as a graphic designer to people, as a logo designer to people, because that is the service they need at the time. So it makes the client feel more comfortable to work with you. But in your mind, you cannot cage yourself. When you talk to yourself, you must call yourself a designer. Even if sometimes for specification, when you are filling a form, designer might sound ambiguous. So you might want to write web, graphics, but you know well within yourself that you are more than that. Because we realize that we restrict our influence by putting ourselves in containers, and we restrict our potential. So you see a lot of designers, they restrict themselves to service providers. So if a client doesn't approach you, you are not working. Because to you, you are in the service industry, strictly in the service industry. So we are always waiting for clients to come. But that is not how it should be. You do not wait for clients to come as a designer, as a creative. As a creative, you are in both the service industry and the product industry. So when clients are not coming, because you have a creative mind as a designer, you are always working on a project. And the project might be a relationship. How to build a relationship with another designer. So that is it, but we don't see that as a design project. Talking about something with a fellow designer to us is not work. It's just gist. Because for us, work is pixels, is switching on a laptop. But that's not it. You see, I have a business partner, and we meet every particular day of the week. And we've been doing it for a very long time. And every time we meet, nobody brings a laptop. We don't bring a laptop. We bring ourselves, we put our phones aside, and we converse for about 2 hours. And we talk about a wide range of subjects. And sometimes you can sum it up to a particular thing, but sometimes it's just discussion. But after a while, we realize that, oh, we've come up with this idea to do this. And then an idea comes up. Because every time we meet, it is a project. It's like working on a logo project. And it gets better and better and better with every meeting. So our meeting, because we are both creatives, it's a creative project. And that's why we are able to come up with ideas in the long run that are impactful. So you must see yourself as a designer, as a creative, even when you're not designing graphics. I don't know how many designers are aware of the story of TED, the conference. Technology, Entertainment and Design, TED. I don't know how many people are aware of the story that this conference was started by 2 designers, Harry Marks and Richard Wurman. They were both designers. Harry Marks was a TV graphics designer, so he used to design graphics for TV. Richard Wurman was an architect and a graphic designer. They were both designers, but they came together in 1984 to start what we now know as TED. Now imagine if these 2 men had restricted themselves to TV design and graphic design or architecture. But they thought that, look, because they were always in design mode, they said, let us design a conference that people would come together and share ideas about technology, entertainment, and design. And together, they both designed the most influential conference in the world today, TED. Nearly everyone has watched a TED conference. But it was started by 2 people who on a good day you can put in the container of graphic designers. And in 2015, according to Wikipedia, TED made $66.2 million in revenue. And that is growing every single year. So you don't always have to be creating graphics to be influential. That is a myth. You are always in design mode. You are always giving out value. So sometimes being a designer is not about launching Photoshop or Illustrator or Figma or whatever it is. Sometimes being a designer is about starting a WhatsApp group, about starting a YouTube channel, about starting a podcast. You are not less of a designer because you are doing that. In fact, you are more of a designer because you are doing that. Because you are bringing people together. You are designing experiences. You are designing relationships. And maybe one day your WhatsApp group could be a TED, earning you hundreds of millions of dollars in the long run. But once you restrict yourself to a container, You can only make what that container allows you to do. You cannot go out of that container. So if there's one thing you are going to leave from with today's session, whether you're a creative or whatever you are, whatever industry, you are not a container. You are not a graphic designer. You are a designer. You are not a pediatrician or an O&G doctor. You are a healer. You are not a criminal lawyer or a land lawyer. You resolve issues. You understand? So you must see the larger picture and know what business you're in, so that when you see opportunities, you can take them rather than let them slide by.